Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we are going to talk about the Ohio State win over Maryland. Huge win for the Buckeyes. Signature win for Jake Diebler this season. He got some signature wins in his career last year, but those were when he was interim. Now he is officially the head coach of Ohio State. He's got some signature wins now. And, Purdue on the road, he was able to get this Maryland game. He's able to get now at home in an atmosphere that was pretty sleepy at home. I mean, Bill Raftery and those guys, they were talking about it. They're like, oh, there's not a whole lot of energy here, and kind of made you nervous if you were an Ohio State fan. And if you were a Maryland fan, you were kind of sitting back and thinking, just like last time, baby, going to get up by 40 points again, as the Maryland Terrapins were able to get on an early 8-0 run. They made their first 7 shots of the game, led by Reese and Rice. I mean, there was some ball screen action that was just unstoppable for Ohio State. Ohio State was missing Aaron Bradshaw in this game. Sean Stewart did end up playing in this one, but only for 16 minutes, and he fouled out. So there were rumors that he wasn't going to play before this one, but he eventually did. And Ohio State really didn't have a big man in this game. Evan Mahaffey was their big man for most of this game between Ivan Nigjovan, Chigovin. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Their Croatian 7-footer, and between Sean Stewart, Evan Mahaffey, and him, they kind of played the 5-man role for him, and 2 of them fouled out of the game. So Ohio State continues to struggle down low with the fouls and that kind of stuff. But overall, you got Devin Royal playing really well for him. Let's stay in the first half though. All right, I'm going to switch this over to the first half, so we see just the first half stats. Maryland, they controlled the paint in the first half. Ohio State really couldn't do much against them. They had all kinds of offensive struggles. They were missing shots. They were down by as much as 17 in the first half. It really did look like, kind of a recipe for what last game was, with how much Maryland was hitting and shooting well in the first half. They didn't shoot from 3 very well in the first half, only 14%, but they were only 1 for 7. If you take away those 6 misses, they were 16 for 21 in the first half just from the field. So, like I said, taking away the 3-pointers there. So, I mean, that's some pretty insane shooting. They were able to get down in the paint, do whatever they wanted, and then when they weren't getting into the paint, Ohio State's drop coverage, I mean, especially with Jagovin, their drop coverage just was not working. You had Rice and guys like that just pulling up right off the ball screen and knocking them down. Now, credit Ohio State in the second half; they were able to make some defensive adjustments, but thankfully those defensive adjustments started a little bit at the end of the first half as Ohio State got some shots to fall, and it was key for them to go on a 10-2 run to end the first half, and that kind of gave them the momentum they needed. They cut the lead to only 9 on that 10-2 run for them. Gave them the momentum they needed, gave them the belief, and I give credit to this Ohio State team. It would have been easy for them to just lay down and die, just like it was. It was a really bad atmosphere when it came to, fan support and stuff like that. I'm not trying to go after the fans. I'm just saying, it wasn't super lively. At the end of the day, I don't really blame the fans. The players weren't giving them a whole lot to be lively about. So, but still, it wasn't necessarily a huge environment for them to, feed off of a lot and support the team. But they did start getting into it more, like I said, on that 10-2 run to end the game, so that was huge for them. But in the second half, that was really when things started to shine for Ohio State as they made defensive adjustments. You see the difference here. You go to the first half, and guys like Reese and Rice, 14 and 11, how many shots they were hitting, 5 for 5, 5 for 7. You go to the second half, Reese still had 10, but 2 for 4. Rice, went cold, 2 for 8, only 7 points. They were able to get to the foul line, especially Reese and Queen, especially with Ohio State fouling out the way they did. Mahaffey had 4 of his 5 fouls there in the second half. But Ohio State made defensive adjustments. They improved their defense. They forced tough shots. Maryland went through a cold stretch, shooting 25% in the second half. It was really impressive what they were able to do in this one. Yeah, if I go to the entire game here, if I go to the second half, what is it? Oh, it doesn't change it. That's weird. All right, I apologize. If I go to the game here, it's just Maryland. They went cold in the second half. They weren't able to shoot nearly as well. Ohio State was much more aggressive with their defense. The switch to more of Sean Stewart and Evan Mahaffey really helped them because they were actually able to kind of trap and guard closer off the ball screens, and they were able to get help from the other side. Essentially, especially Devin Royal was able to do a good job there, and Maryland didn't find their shooters when they were open. And when they did find their shooters, Maryland wasn't hitting their shots when they needed to. So the importance of Ohio State winning key possessions down the stretch, getting the defensive stops they need. This was one of those games where it just felt like every time Ohio State needed to make a play in the second half, they were able to make a play. Even when Maryland had good defensive possessions against them, Ohio State would still find a way to score, and that was by Bruce Thornton. Really, I mean, Bruce Thornton with 31 points in this game. He takes over in the final 7 minutes. 17 of his 17 points were in the final 7 minutes. He got some key buckets in this one. How he controlled the pace and kept Ohio State composed. And whenever the offense broke down, which happens a lot for Ohio State, they don't have a very good offense. It is what it is. Bruce Thornton was able to really make a play, and it just highlights kind of what I talked about from that Purdue game, which is if Ohio State doesn't have a player step up and kind of become that dude in the moment to lead you back or really push your team along, you're not going to win the games. But thankfully for Ohio State, they had Bruce Thornton be that dude. At Purdue, it was Micah Parrish that was that dude. Against Maryland here, it was Bruce Thornton that turned into that dude. But overall, I mean, Maryland they collapsed. Maryland, they had their shooting woes, especially in the second half. They weren't sharing the ball super well. The passes were not on time. They weren't on target. They had missed opportunities to extend the lead. Failure to close out the game despite leading for most of it. I mean, this was a game where Maryland looked like the better team for probably 32, 33 minutes of this game. Maybe some stretches where Ohio State looked better, but Ohio State was able to climb back into this one. They never gave up. They gave great effort the entire time. Some star performances in this game. You got to look at Bruce Thornton, career high 31 points leading to the comeback. Like I said, 17 of those in the final 7 minutes. His leadership, his energy, his clutch playmaking. He hit a bank shot to put the team up there at the end of the game. It was tied with about, 5, 6 seconds left, maybe 9. He hit a bank shot to put them ahead, which is huge. Julian Reese for Maryland, he was huge in this one, dominated inside with 24 points, 13 rebounds. Ohio State just had no answer for them. It was really, really kind of strange they didn't continue to go back to him more in the second half. Or in the entire game, he was 10 for 11 from free throw. Derek Queen was 7 for 13. Derek Queen needs to improve those free throws. Those could have been huge for him to hit some of those there in the second half as well. And then Rodney Rice was the other piece. He cooled off in the second half, but just really, really hot shooting in the first half of the game. Micah Parrish also, he contributed 13 points, 6 rebounds. He had some timely scoring opportunities. He stayed within reach. Micah Parrish is just one of those players on this team that makes plays happen. You're not going to get, the big, huge rebounding numbers from him, but 6 rebounds in this game. He contributed well. Only 2 turnovers. Devin Royal grabbed 11 rebounds in this game. That's huge for a guy who's only 6'6". I think actually Devin Royal and Micah Parrish are the same height. A guy only 6'6" to be going in amongst Julian Reese and Derek Queen to be able to battle with them and get those rebounds. Pros and cons for Ohio State and Maryland in this one. Let's start with Ohio State. The pro, strong defensive adjustments in the second half. Jake Diebler made the adjustments, and Ohio State reacted to them well. They were resilient. They had ability throughout the entire game to come back, even in large deficits. They didn't give up, even after last game. When they went down huge early, they used that to kind of motivate themselves. Jake Diebler before the game was talking about kind of some revenge a couple days before, and they used that to their advantage, which is good for them because obviously they remembered that. And then Thornton, just his clutch ability, right? If Ohio State is going to get a player like Thornton or Parrish to step up in these clutch moments, that's huge for a team. Maybe Ohio State isn't the most talented team out there, but for them to have the ability to have multiple players be clutch is huge for them. Now, with their cons, they did have the slow start. They did have Nagovin in there at the 5. I like Nagovin. I don't think he is. He can't be the primary option for you at the 5. This team has to get Aaron Bradshaw back. I think he was just sick, which is kind of going around the league right now. It happens, but inconsistent shooting, particularly from the 3-point range as well for most of the game. Ohio State ended 4 for 16 from 3. If you're this Ohio State team, you're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the nation. You have to shoot better than that if you're going to win these type of games consistently. Thankfully, Bruce Thornton had his clutch ability, banking in the 3-point shot, but there at the end of the game. But you're going to have to shoot better from 3 and get better looks and create better action off of the ball screens in order to get a guy open from 3. Maryland pros in this one, they dominated early, great execution on both ends of the first half. They got Ohio State in a ton of foul trouble. Just the physicality of Julian Reese and Derek Queen was something that Ohio State just quite frankly wasn't really prepared for. And Reese's, his strong performance as well. He's an anchor for this team to rely on right now. Not like Jameer Young was, where he kind of dominated the ball all the time. It's good for Maryland. They have those different ball handlers. They have got different guys who can kind of make plays. But Julian Reese is kind of at the center of it all. Pick and roll, flare screens, everything else that they're able to do. Maryland, their cons in this one. The second half collapse, poor shooting, lack of execution. Just unluckiness in some ways too, right? They played really good defense on that final possession of the game that Ohio State had. Ohio State tried to get some crossing action in the middle to try and confuse the Maryland defense, and they reacted well to it, and it turned into 2 or 3 dribbles by Bruce Thornton to break down his defender, and his defender almost blocked the shot, but Bruce Thornton got it up over him and banked it in. It is what it is. So, but before that, the possession for Maryland was a shot clock violation. You can't have that. And under a minute in the game, like Kevin Willard has to get his guys set up in better position. If the play doesn't work, you have to have something that your guys know quick to be able to run, or you have to have a go-to player that you can put the ball in his hands and say, go and get a bucket. Go at least put the ball on the rim. We've got Derek Queen. We've got Julian Reese. Those guys should be able to be out there and get an offensive rebound if we crash the glass enough. And honestly, on the shot, they could have possibly got the offensive rebound. They just didn't get it off in time. So key takeaways in this one. This one shows that Ohio State is peaking at the right time. They have a good opportunity here. Their next 4 games, I believe 3 of their next 4 are on or at home for them. Yeah, they're going through a really tough part of their schedule, or they have already gone through a really tough part of their schedule. So they're going to see at Nebraska. That is going to be a tough game. But then they go home to Washington, one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. You should be able to win at home. Michigan, a rivalry game. Michigan is a good team, but they've also shown that they're volatile in some ways, that you could possibly overcome that and get the win there. And then Northwestern. Brooks Barnheiser isn't playing for them right now. Who did they beat the other day? They beat somebody the other day, and it was impressive. I think it was USC they beat the other day. That was impressive. They were able to do that, but I do anticipate that without Brooks Barnheiser, they are going to have some struggles. So Ohio State needs to win probably 3 of these next 4 games. If they lose at Nebraska, they need to win their home games. But there's definitely a path here for Ohio State to make the tournament. And one thing that Ohio State did early in the season that is really going to help them is how many tough games they played early in the season. They didn't just rely on their Big Ten schedule to give them quad 1 games and stuff like that. They played Texas to start the year, Texas A&M, Pitt, Auburn, Kentucky. Like, there's a reason why you go out and you play those big games. Now, of those big games, they only won 2. They beat Texas and Kentucky, but those are 2 signature wins that you can have. Huge blowout losses like 91-53 against Auburn. Hardly anybody remembers that about Ohio State right now. When they look at that in the NCAA tournament stuff, like, they're just going to say, okay, they let that one get away from them. But they beat Kentucky, right? Like, they beat Kentucky by 20, 85-65, and that was just 2 weeks later or a week later, something like that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's why you go out there. That's why you play the big quad 1 games and stuff like that in the out of conference. I give Jake Diebler a lot of credit there. I think he needs to fix some things on offense for his guys to help put them in better position. But if they can figure out some of their offensive issues, this could be a really dangerous team in Ohio State. If I'm Jake Diebler, I'm going out and I'm getting some assistance for my offense as quickly as possible. Now, it is hard to run your offense when you don't have an experienced 5 or a consistent 5 out there. Sean Stewart is more of a 4. But he's out there trying to do his best at the 5, which I commend him for a lot. But Obviously he's not a 5. He's fouling out almost every game, or at least getting close to fouling out. He's in foul trouble almost every single game, so it's tough for him, but he's doing his absolute best. You can't ask for much more than that. And for Ohio State, defense and toughness, like this is a team that needs to be defensive, and they need to be tough, and that's what they are this season. And if they keep being tough and they keep getting just enough offense, they're going to find themselves in the NCAA tournament. And defense and toughness can take you a good amount of ways if you are healthy in the NCAA tournament. You get Aaron Bradshaw back; he can be a key piece for you. You get Sean Stewart. Him some rest. He might not be fouling as much. Evan Mahaffey can kind of be your small ball 5 in there as well. So I like what Ohio State has. Maryland shouldn't impact their NCAA chances. They got ranked. They are ranked. They'll be fine. They're making the NCAA tournament. If anything, this just kind of affects their ability to possibly get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. We'll see how things go out from there, but we'll start talking about that a little bit later on as we get to the end of the season. So that's everything with this game. Ohio State defeats Maryland. Good win for Ohio State. Maryland needs to bounce back as they are playing. Let me check really fast. They are playing Rutgers next and then at Nebraska. So Rutgers, a game they should be able to win, and then they get a 3-game home stretch to get some good time there. So Rutgers, at Nebraska, Iowa, USC, Michigan State. That Michigan State game is a huge one that they'll need to be prepared for. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I do appreciate it. Have a good one.